The moment you show that you are vulnerable, you show the fact that, you know what, you're okay with the degree of failure, your teams will breathe easy. Communicate, get clarity. Communication gives you clarity. This much you can fail on. So it helps you prioritize a lot more. Not every organization has a high margin. Not every organization is sitting on, loads of cash reserves. In India, healthcare is very, very, very costly. How do you leverage the network of multiple providers through a very simple app? Work with your employees. They will be telling you what they need. Listen in.
Hey everybody, welcome to Close the Loop. Excited for another episode with a super awesome guest. We have Roma Bindroo, who leads people at Sanofi Consumer. She's got over 15 years of experience leading people teams. And today we're going to talk about change, which I think is a super relevant topic. Things are changing all the time, but we're going to demystify change management and realize this is just the normal way of working. Roma, thanks so much for joining us. I think awesome to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were talking when we were preparing, you were saying that people have made change management into this scary word, this boogeyman. Why do you think that is?
I think it's like the Voldemort effect, right? The man who must not be named, the one who must not be named, right? So it's like sometimes we make such a caricaturized version of how things should be, and we get so attached to them that everything which is even a trifle different than what that should be in our view, we think that it's something which we need to be afraid of.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's the question, that maybe we have had so many quotes saying change is constant. We keep changing every day. We as we grow, we change so much. But the moment we talk about an organization changing, it ends up becoming something which is to be feared.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot more about just making change every day. And the moment you make it every day, and the moment you start naming it, right? It just ensures the fear sort of goes away.
We are going to talk about change, and we're probably the word change we'll end up using like 100 times in this.
Yes, I can see that.
I think it would be nice to contextualize, what do we even mean? Like, what are the kinds of change we're talking about? It's super broad. Like, internally within our organization, we're going from 200, 300 person Series A, B funded company to like a 400, 500, 600 person Series C funded company. Top line and gross margin focus to a pure profitability focus. I think that's like a big journey that we're navigating. But yeah, what other kinds of like change are we talking?
See, honestly, it depends on what's critical from an organization's perspective. If it's a 30-member team or an organization, for them, doing something where they change the direction of the company, even for 10 members, that might be big enough to be called a change management project. But largely, it's something that has enough scale and that needs a lot of effort, wherein you need multiple teams to come together and make it happen. Small organization will call it differently. A big organization will call it differently. But wherever we know that it's something very different from what you've been pursuing for some time, and it needs a clear call to action and effort across teams to make it happen, that largely would be change. And it can be even something even simple as, maybe for a longest time you had a growth target of 20% and you want to go to 40 to 50%. Anytime there's a massive scale that you build in, and I think that's largely where we are coming from. But largely, even in regular day-to-day working of most orgs, today, every organization has some change initiative running nonstop. They might be having it every quarter.
Hopefully.
Mostly. That's the only way to survive. Otherwise, they would not be here.
Right,
I think any organization which is not looking at certain specific innovations, pipelining, all of that is actually bringing in being prepared for change. But in most cases, especially in people context, change largely comes from a change in business strategy. Because there's nothing like a people strategy if there is no clarity on what the business is trying to do, right? So unless there's a very clear business need, it can be to change the way they're working, it can be on their metrics, it can be on their scale. A people strategy, and in it specifically a change strat will come in place only when there's a very clear I would say relationship to what's happening in the business.
Yeah, so I got to hear about this briefly, but maybe if you want to walk us through your journey quickly, maybe, and each stop of the companies you worked at, maybe if you want to let us know what was like one of the types of changes you were part of driving there. I think that'd be cool and a little hard to answer, but. You
See,
can
I think
humor
I've been,
us.
I think honestly, I've been, whether you call it being fortunate or, just being hooked, I think my career post graduation in MBA, literally started with being a consultant. And I think at one point I was managing like 4 or 5 projects, all into change. Because largely people come to consultants only when there's a bigger change that you're looking for.
Yeah.
You want to change something that you're doing, structure you want to bring in. So for me, I think I have been addicted to change pretty early. Then I joined a behemoth in India as an internal change management specialist. Then I got into Johnson & Johnson, which I thought would not have such a high speed of change management, but at that time it was going through a lot of change. Then followed my entry into the startup space, where I had a lot of fun. Nearly killed myself for 2 years. A lot of work, a very high level of scale in building one of the best organizations in QCOM today. And the last 9 months for me in the healthcare organization that I am in today has been all about setting up a listed entity. So it's a demerger, it's a setting up a listed entity, and setting up a new team for the next few months. So for me, I think someone was telling me that it's not what you get to do, you attract it.
Yeah.
Because I think I enjoy it, and for me as a person, when I see an opportunity to make something better, I will always jump into it.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. I mean, I feel like you've been able to see a lot at high levels of a bunch of different things. So I think kudos to you for attracting
manifesting it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
The secret.
The vibes were right. Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you have a whole bank of stories from all these places, but if you were to maybe walk us through what was current state in one of the roles, where you wanted to get to, and what was especially once the business strategy was set, what was then the people team's role in enabling that change to happen?
For me, I think Zepto was a scale-up of what I had learned in that experience. Crazy work, but I think just magnified many times the work that I had actually initiated and learned, to be honest, in Tata Consumer, end-to-end, managing the entire change, and really understanding how to make change work. With the right set of team, build the right collaboration, or communicate, have the right rules in place, and not vie for perfection. So in a way, I think that sorted me a lot more. Before that, I was somebody who was very crazy about being a perfectionist, and you need to get everything right. But I think these 2 experiences for me made me love chaos a lot more.
Right. You lose the luxury of perfection when you're growing so fast, right? It's just not a valuable target anymore.
And honestly, I think more than not being a valuable target, Ryan, I think it just takes away from a lot of things that you can do. Because the moment you run after perfection from a 90 to 95%, the effort that goes is 20% higher, which might be utilized for many other things that are more critical, important at that point of time. So in fact, a lot of my conversations even today start with, 2-3 things. One, over-communicate. Communicate, get clarity. Communication gives you clarity. It brings clarity into your initial team. And when you communicate clearly with your greater group as well, even if there is uncertainty, the fact that you're having a conversation, in a way that satisfies the need to, to be heard, and you create trust. And second is have a very clear degree of failure. So, I actually, even today, I start with, okay, you know what? I need this much you can fail on. So it helps you prioritize a lot more.
And what does it look like? What does it look like defining the scope of failure?
It's in prioritization. Anything which is critical for only 1 or 2 teams, is not compliance related, is not needed to run the business that day. It is a luxury, not a critical need. Push that into your degree to failure. The moment you show that you are vulnerable, you show the fact that, you're okay with the degree of failure, your teams will breathe easy.
Any fast-growing startup, I think, can relate to what you're saying really well. But I think also challenging, larger growth stage companies, or even stable, pretty large companies, they also still have limited resources. It's not unlimited. It's never unlimited. And so it's still about prioritization and allowing certain small fires to burn in the face of the big strategic fire of not adopting new technology or missing the wave of some huge disruption, right?
See, defining those non-negotiables eases pressure from everybody. Because then you also are aware about how much your team is putting their effort into things which are negotiables. Being very clear, precise on those 2 things that matter. Do not have a long checklist. It doesn't work. I mean, there was a time I used to like writing from number 1 to number 20, everything in my, what I'm going to accomplish in a day. Today, I think I just write 3, and there are days when I don't even write anything because I know that these are the 2 things or 3 things I want to get out of the day.
Was there an experience that made you realize I need to reduce the size of my checklist?
I think I started looking at my checklists, starting with changing myself. It just helps me in a way enable organizations as well.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think that's great advice to somebody who's moving from more stable, larger org to a faster growing one. And we see that transition happen now a lot, right? Yeah. Any other advice, especially for people leaders, on folks who want to prepare themselves to succeed in a faster growth, more uncertain sort of environment or company? I'm sure a lot of people are on the fence saying, oh my God, that seems risky. That seems scary.
When you change careers in such a form, there is a risk associated. Yeah. So, we have to be mindful of that. But yes, I think for anybody who's planning to do that shift, you'll only know how it feels like when you do it. Yeah. So unless there is a very clear responsibility or need for you to which you cannot take a risk, and there's this ad, "Dar ke aage jeet hai." You win after you conquer fear.
Right.
I mean, just go for it, at least for a short ride. It's just worth it.
No, yeah, makes total sense. I mean, I think there's so many examples of people saying like, I'm going to turn risk on in my career. And I mean, some of the biggest success stories are like basically follow that. And is there anything about like a mental model or way of working shift that people need to prepare for? Because I've seen that personally. I think folks coming from, say, slower growth environments or less innovative environments, quote unquote, to like a startup or fast growth or a new setup.
High change.
High change. Like what are those things that they need to figure out?
See, I think as an organization, first of all, you have to accept that they have already taken the first step.
Yeah, they're there.
They're there. Right. They're there, right? So they have shown up. And I think we have to start with that level of empathy and acknowledgement. Because in a way, to be honest, it's both ways. People also end up losing patience, saying, what? They're coming from slow growth orgs and hence they're not scaling up. So I think the first point is to just cut out that perception on both sides. Yeah. Have an equal ground and to say that, they're also going to take time.
That's a great point.
We'll also take some time. But the fact that they've shown up is always a good starting point. The second is to honestly, again, prioritize. What are those few things you expect them to do well? Now, again, there are pieces on which they'll need guidance. There are pieces you'll expect them to manage by themselves. So what is it from their previous experience that they can easily bank into? And especially if the learning agility is high, you can always have them work with somebody who knows or has been doing it earlier. Sure. And if it's completely from scratch, when you actually you pick and choose those folks, they have to be people who are comfortable with not having a very clear goal, not having a very clear ask, and they can find out things by themselves. So especially when there is a mold to be broken, I think it's always important to look at somebody who's a self-starter. Because there are so many times, honestly, as a leader in such setups also, you yourself will not know what all is needed. But getting somebody on board, giving them that kind of empowerment, right. Trusting whatever they are coming up with, and just guiding them through on what is it that they non-negotiables. What is it that you expect from them? Yeah. What is it that's not working? Because genuinely, if they have not been exposed to it earlier, unless they themselves are run by that entire energy inside to say, I want to do something very different, which is will, they are going to take a bit of time. So having that patience is also important. But for those who are coming in, now that was from the organization side, but those who are coming in, be prepared to learn. Be prepared to put in a few extra hours. I know that's oh
my God.
Oh my God, if you say something like that, it's not
it's over now.
But it is a learning experience. Yeah, if you go you move from your 12th to graduation, you move from your graduation to post-graduation, you put in hours to learn. Yeah. So especially when you're working and learning on the job, there will be hours that you will need to put in to learn. Now, whether it's a part of your workday or beyond, be prepared to learn again. It is, in a way, such setups always end up schooling you. Yeah. So be prepared to be questioned about your beliefs. Be prepared to learn with others. Be prepared to go back and say, I need help. Because I think that's very important. And in most cases, even if the skill takes some time to build and you don't know the technical specifics, the fact that you are willing enough to go the extra mile, you are hustling, you're putting in effort, that actually creates a much more favorable impression. Eventually, perception does work, right? So that definitely creates a very strong impression, perception, and it also gives you as somebody, as a new entrant, a feeling of a win.
Yeah.
Because you will need some early wins. If you're failing every day, you'll be like, you'll start questioning your life choices, saying, you know what, maybe too early, I shouldn't have done this, I didn't mind it. So find a few things that you would succeed in, but learn hard on the other things. Because the sooner you cross the curve, the better it will be for you to assimilate sooner. But start with that hunger. That hunger is that fire in the belly is very, very important. Very important.
I feel like everything you just said about helping a new person adapt to this environment is also the same advice you would give to an HR managing change management. It's like, start with hunger, stack early wins, focus on the non-negotiables, be honestly, open learning.
Like, to be very, very honest, and when we talk about change, or even for that matter, when we are building up an org, at some point, all the functions come together. It's not something that HR will do. It's not something that finance will do. Eventually, we are all influencing people for specific asks and for specific expectations. All people managers are doing it. All folks who are coming in as new entrants, they are setting up their own goals and targets, right? You don't need HR to always run a performance management system.
Right.
So eventually, it's about how you just run a team and run an organization. And it really doesn't matter which function you're a part of. I mean, there are many organizations which do not have an HR function. It's not that they don't function. As long as they're clear on what they want to deliver, they're clear about how they're incentivizing, how they're retaining, it's largely taken care of.
As some major changes happening in an organization, right? There's this like big desire to cross the finish line. How do people leaders and business leaders in general, keep empathy? Because sometimes it feels like efficiency to get to that goal, cross that finish line, whatever that change is, move this metric from here to here. Some people would say empathy and efficiency is like a dichotomy, and some people would say no, you have to balance both. Like, how do you do that? It's a little bit of an abstract question.
See, my starting point will always be about balancing care and excellence. I think they both need to work together, and where in cultures and organizations where they work together, it does create a very different level of psychological safety. It does create a very different environment. That said, not every organization has a high margin. Not every organization is sitting on loads of cash reserves. It's important to also understand, as an organization, what are those pieces that you can run with when we're talking about empathy? What are those pieces that you can't? Like, for example, letting somebody who's not performing go. Many people say that, not empathetic. You should continue with the journey, give them an opportunity to perform. Now, for an organization which has a lot of money and nobody's questioning about productivity from a headcount, it might be easier to do that. An organization which is running on, let's say, 12 months or 8 months of runway, it may not be possible. I think the entire conversation ends up being which organization you're a part of. And especially when we're talking about empathy, what exactly are we talking about? Sometimes we end up confusing empathy with not asking for performance, not asking for productivity. Eventually, there's an objective of the org. There's a difference between not-for-profit and for-profit. If as an organization you're standing tall for profit, with as much love that we keep talking about, we love these statements about every organization is a family. The reality is a family will always take care of folks who are weak, who are not performing. As an organization, you will not have that leeway beyond a specific time. Right?
I think that's well articulated.
And that there's a reality to it. And I think, honestly, a lot of folks who are coming up today understand that.
On the topic of care and excellence, obviously benefits is a potent tool for people teams, right? I think people work for purpose, passion, learning, community, and benefits and pay, and maybe equity. On the topic of benefits, obviously Loop being a benefits company and you having seen really great benefits at orgs that you've worked with, what's your philosophy around benefits, like, first, and then two, what's left unfulfilled? Like, what is the market not delivering in the way of benefits that you would like?
I think it's completely dependent upon your employee demographics. If it's, for example, if it's a new age, young org, what they're going to value will be very different. They might need coverage for your parents. They might need somebody to just ensure food is delivered on their doorsteps. They might be looking at an Uber, to take care of it. I remember once I had somebody who mentioned that, can we have a partnership with dry cleaners because they didn't want to wash their clothes.
Oh,
And that's completely okay.
that makes sense.
So
yeah.
for me, I think the way in the few organizations where I had the privilege of structuring benefits and working with partners on that, I literally would always start with a survey to ask my employees, what is it that you need? And then I will slice and dice it basis certain age cohorts to say, okay, what will people go for? What is it needed? And I think for me, that has given us the best benefit programs ever. So it depends on the cohort. So the first thing is listen to your employees, point one. Secondly, understand what all is available in the market. So be mindful of everything that is there in the market. The market is really becoming a lot more better. So there are organizations who have some amazing benefits offering, right? And more today, the workforce wants to be in control of what they choose. So what is the possibility of flexibility that you can give them across, be it on flexible benefits, be it on pay structures, be it on whether they want to go for a 12% provident fund. Do you want to give them flexibility on gratuity? Do you want to really add it as a part of your fix? There's so much that you can do across the entire reward structure. In India, healthcare is very, very, very costly. And especially as an organization, when we are able to broker deals, we literally get a lot of things at comparatively a lower cost than if they would have gone for it by themselves as individuals, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity in engaging across. So yes, so first ask your team. Second, understand what's there in the market. Third, look at how much can you really take care of. Eventually, cost is an important factor.
Yeah.
So you will have a budget. And I think for me, what's worked beautifully is that not taking all cost myself sometimes. Sometimes there's so many benefits in which you can share with an employee. And the fact that you're giving them a better rate, which can be, a change in policy cover, which can be gym membership, which can be doctor on call. There's so many things, right? Dietitian on call, multiple things. You don't need to take the cost completely. So I think breaking through the older paradigms of working without losing focus on compliance. There are still things which we need to be compliant with, but being flexible enough to take feedback from your employees, take feedback from market, understand what is it that needs to be taken care of yourself, understand what is that you would want to share with employees, be open with them. If nobody is signing up for shared benefits, that's completely okay. Then you only give this much. But work with your employees. They will be telling you what they need. Listen in. Some benefits that I've seen work really well beyond the health plans has been, tie up with certain apps which take care of all your health needs. So you have dental on call, or you have partnerships with certain partners there, your dietitian on call, you have a specialist on call, you have relationships with other platforms, with CureFit or somebody else, blah, blah, blah. How do you leverage the network of multiple providers through a very simple app? My current organization actually has caregiver leave and support for cancer patients also in the family, which is lovely, right?
Cool.
So how do you understand the problems that the micro ecosystem is going through?
One of Nike's founding values, I feel Knight, was it won't be pretty. And I think that is so true. I think that was beautifully articulated wisdom, honestly, for HR as a community. We see it from the perspective of benefits. They're taking on so much every single day. They're managing so much, and I think creating that pocket of peace is a really actionable suggestion for next week for all of us. And I hate to end this pocket of peace, but this is really, really fun. And thanks so much, Roma, I think, for joining us. Lovely to have you, and we'll try to figure out other ways we can share cool content, because you're full of awesome stories. So thanks so much for the time.
Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah.